At some point in hour two, you will see Ben's top 10, but now it's a conversation about the individuals as we look at the Heisman Trophy odds board entering this second weekend in November. We welcome you back to College Football Today, live right here on SportsGrid for the second Saturday in November. We had this conversation earlier with a focus on Colorado's Travis Hunter, but we also now talk about the co-favorite entering Week 11, Joe, and that is Cam Ward. Both at a plus 185 price. Cam Ward 2 weeks ago against Florida State in the rivalry game. The only time this season he has thrown for less than 3 bills, 208, and did not record multiple touchdown passes. He had 0. How did he respond last week against Duke in a tight game for the Canes in that second half? 400 yards in 5 touchdown tosses. It is why Cam Ward is a co-favorite to strike the pose in December.
Yeah, think about what he's done this year. 29 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, over 3,100 passing yards. Miami has their swag back in response to this matchup this coming weekend against Georgia Tech. They're undefeated. They have everything in front of them. And again, if you take Cam Ward out of that lineup, they are completely a different ball club. They are not undefeated, and he's a main reason why. So definitely deserving. I think what's interesting when we just look at the Heisman picture in terms of, who, because the last 4 weeks we've seen, years, Devontae Smith, Joe Burrow just come on. Could Jackson Dart, I'll throw it out, could Jackson Dart, if he just throws for 400 today runs the table, can anybody steal it from both of those guys over the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks?
Yeah, I think Jackson Dart statistically meets the requirement, right? Nobody has more passing yards. Nobody actually has a better college quarterback passer rating this season. I mean, he threw – I saw the stat. He's the second SEC quarterback to throw for 500 yards and I think 6 touchdowns in a game.
Yeah.
The other was actually Drew Lock, but he was the only one to do it against an SEC team, Jackson Dart. So, you can kind of call it Arkansas if you want. Here's kind of the thing, though, Joe. All of Jackson Dart's worst games are against his best teams.
Yep. No,
his worst game by far this year, not even close, LSU.
Sure.
Last season, 2 of his 3 worst games, Bama and Georgia. So it goes into the reason why I'm not on him or I'm not on Ole Miss today is I don't see any world he goes out there and throws for 404 because that's kind of my thing with that game. And because it ties into the Heisman. There's just no evidence that he or Ole Miss are capable of stepping up in this spot.
Which is why I bring it up, because if he does what, the unthinkable is all of a sudden now he goes from where he is right now to maybe, 3rd or 4th, and he's maybe battling it out with Genty in that situation.
So just to say, he was one of my Heisman looks entering this season. I think on that summer CFT special, I highlighted a 12 to or 16 to 1 price on Jackson Dart because the numbers are always going to be there. Jackson Dart currently leads all of FBS college football in passing yards at 3,210. Last week again, 25 of 31, 515 yards, 6 touchdowns against Arkansas. As many touchdown throws as incompletions. It was also Ole Miss's leading rusher with 47 yards on the ground. But to Kev's point, and I think a huge opportunity or perhaps blemish on the Heisman resume, depending on the result today against Georgia. Because I bet Ole Miss to win the SEC before this year got underway. If they lose today against Georgia, not only are their college football playoff hopes mostly diminished, if not all gone, they are not and still have a very difficult path to being in that SEC championship game. A 3rd conference loss today puts that to bed.
So I think that part, though, Ben, so let's say they get the win, right? Yeah. So he's at 20 to 1, Joe. That number will get cut at least in the half, even if he plays middling, right? 250 and 2, right, in a pick. I think the number would still go because his overall season's been so good. The problem is I don't think there's any world that Gabriel and Ward aren't playing in their conference championship games, and it'll get very out of sight, out of mind. That's why I know we're opening the door here. Jaden Daniels never wins the Heisman Trophy under this year's format. He just doesn't. Because everybody else is playing in conference championship games, and he had 3 losses and wouldn't have even made the playoff under last year's format. I don't think Jackson Dart is as if there's 2 other quarterbacks both playing in the conference championship game, I think he would need Miami and Oregon to lose in the conference championship game.
It's possible. And then the other thing, too, is, and I bring it up because we've seen players steal it in the last 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
He plays Georgia, Florida, Miss State. If he played Georgia, Tennessee, or an LSU down the stretch and dominates Georgia today, then you say, hey, he's got 2 other big games where he can, top 25, top 10 opponents. He could just boat race them if that's possible. He could potentially be there with Cam Ward. That was the only reason why I brought it up, is from a value perspective.
Yeah.
Right now it's Cam Ward, and maybe you can make the argument of Genty should Travis Hunter or Cam Ward drop off.
So we'll talk about Genty in just a moment. Did want to highlight Dylan Gabriel, plus 350, third best price. The numbers are not outlandish like a Cam Ward, and when you're going head-to-head in a quarterback race of stats and even Jackson Dart, Dylan Gabriel is not quite there, but he has thrown for at least 290 in 4 consecutive games, the 4 consecutive covers for the Ducks in Big Ten play. 8 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in that span. Has also scored 4 rushing touchdowns in the last 5 games for Oregon. Again, I think his best, perhaps, explanation for his resume is the fact that Oregon is undefeated and number 1 in the country and more than likely going to play in that Big Ten title game. That will, of course, be a boost. I think Dylan Gabriel is a Heisman Trophy finalist. I'm not sure it's worth a bet at this moment that he actually wins the Heisman Trophy.
No, it's not worth a bet at this moment. Again, I have much different numbers on Gabriel. I would not be betting him at this number because here's why. He's not winning that award without beating Ohio State again. And that's a big ask. Yeah. It is. Now, it's cheaper, right, for him to beat Ohio State again than the plus 350. But here's the thing. I'm not sure if they finish unbeaten, number 1, beat Ohio State again. I'm still not sure he wins it. I'm not. Because Cam Ward might do the same, and his numbers are better. And Hunter's argument is just so completely different that I'm not sure it matters for Gabriel. I will say, I really don't think Genty's in this race that much anymore. I just think that him playing for Boise has caught up to him more than anything. That is what it feels like to me. I don't feel that, they played on some Friday spots with UNLV. He had his, again, it's all relative, but it was his worst game of the season, right? According to his props, he was actually bad in the game, which is insane to say, but is kind of the case. I think Genty's argument was always going to be rewriting the Barry Sanders records, Lisi.
Right.
He's probably not going to do that. And now him playing at Boise, finalist, I don't think he wins it.
No, he's like Jonathan Taylor a few years ago,
you always make
5
that
years
point.
ago. I bring that up because he rushed for 2,000, and I think he came in third in terms of that type of assessment. Now, if he did have the win over Oregon, where they lost by 3, you could say, all right, they have the win over a top, 5 opponents.
He was sensational in that game, 192 in multiple
But you
scores,
still need your team to come through for you in terms of the award in that aspect, if we're splitting hairs, I think.
True, but Boise State is a minus 340 favorite to win the Mountain West. They have that best price of any group of 5 team in minus money to reach the college football playoff. There will be those Heisman-esque moments for Ashton Genty. I'm glad you brought up the numbers in comparison to the legend Barry Sanders in his record-setting season back in 1988. Genty in his last 2 games, his 2 worst of the year that he has played the full and complete game, just 4.3 yards per carry. Nothing close to what he was doing early on. At least 30 carries in each game. Still 128 yards, but again, not the volume or the success we have expected. Barry Sanders threw 8 games in 88. 1,691 yards, 24 rushing touchdowns. Barry in his last 6 games ran for at least 215 yards against Big 12 defenses, Big 8 defenses, and averaged 282 yards per game. Genty right now, 15, 25, and 20 touchdowns in comparison to the most recent running back to win a Heisman Trophy, Derrick Henry in 2015 at Alabama. He was only at 1,044 yards through his first 8 games with only 14 touchdowns. And then had 942 in the last 5, including the SEC championship, where he ran the football 44 times. Genty has a chance. The market has dwindled. More around the country up next.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Entering week number 11 of this 2024 college football season, only 5 FBS programs remain unbeaten. We talked about Indiana. We'll talk about Oregon, Miami, and BYU, a part of that as well, as is Army. But let's start here as we get you set for this Saturday with Ohio State hosting Purdue. The Buckeyes, only one blemish. It was against Oregon in Autzen Stadium. Now, Purdue has the spoiler maker lore. Whenever there's not a money line price posted, not exactly expected to pull off the outright upset. Kev, Ohio State, 37.5-point favorite at home today in Columbus. They are ranked 2nd in the college football playoff rankings. They beat Penn State on the road last week in State College. How do Ryan Day and the Buckeyes continue to ride that momentum?
Let me ask you, how long do the spoiler makers exist, like predating Brom?
Long time. Dating back to the 80s, the 90s. Since 1936, they have 17 wins against the AP top 5. That's the modern era of the AP poll. That's kind of the stat people use.
Because my thing is, this year, a few spots, they've done absolutely nothing in them. And Brown,
good memes, though,
had the win over Clemson last week, which is that's a landscape-changing win. And, we're going to talk about Clemson a little bit later on in our show. So I don't know, I wonder if he maybe took the last remaining juice with him.
Do you want the actual stats? Because I have them.
Sure.
So in the last 2 years with Ryan Walters, Purdue is 5-10 against the spread as an underdog. This year they are 1-5 ATS in their 6 games as a dog. Jeff Brom, in his 6 years in West Lafayette, 22-13 against the spread as an underdog. So he has some of that spoiler maker juice that you were alluding to in the last few years.
So I look into this game, and again, there's no upset alert here. There's none of that. Now, Ohio State's been bottled up 2 weeks in a row, 21 against Nebraska, 20 against Penn State. You'd imagine that they kind of break out. If you bet the over, you're like, I'm just kind of betting them to do everything. Are they going to? Do they care? The bet I found in this game, though I admittedly have not placed yet, and maybe it's waiting for the number to get a little bit higher and force my hand. It's actually Kinshawn Judkins under 86.5 rushing yards. Tyree Walker's the only running back in the Big Ten against Purdue to have 90-plus yards. And that's because they get thrashed by every team, and it's like, all right, let's get the starters out of here. Judkins had last week against Penn State what was only his 3rd game of 90-plus yards. The problem is the other 2 came against non-power level competition, which Purdue obviously is presenting as via this line. You make me we'll do some touchdowns and stuff a little bit later. That doesn't count for what we're doing here. I'd look for Judkins under, Joe, mainly because he doesn't really need to go over.
Yeah, well, I would take a look at secondary options like maybe Travion Henderson or a backup because Purdue's given up 203 rushing yards per game. They have lost 7 straight games by an average margin of defeat of 26 points per game. So, yeah, you think they're going to cover 37.5 against Ohio State? Good luck and God bless and Godspeed because I'm not doing that. I will say this, no money line. You know why? The last time Purdue beat Ohio State in Columbus, 1988. So think about that. That goes back a long time, past Drew Brees, right on the cusp of Jim Everett. Greg Fry was the quarterback at Ohio State. That's how long it was back in the day. So think about that, the dominance. I can only look to Ohio State here. Again, I do feel that they run it. Now, maybe you don't want to take a shot on Judkins, but it could be Will Howard on the ground. It could be anybody. I think they exploit them. And the way that offensive line, that patchwork offensive line, was able to wear down Penn State, look for them to eat in this matchup.
Which is huge because that was a main concern for Ohio State. Starting left tackle out for this year. Zen Mahalski was the backup. He was injured. They moved over some offensive line pieces to figure it out, and they held down an elite Penn State front. Ohio State is also that defensively. Just wanted to read these off. Only 17 red zone attempts has the Buckeyes defense allowed this season, tied for 4th fewest in the FBS. They have only allowed 6 red zone touchdowns. That is the fewest in all of the country. My favorite bet for this game, Ohio State to win via shutout at +4.
Shutout.
Ohio State favored in all 5 Big Ten games. They're 3-2 against the spread. They have covered in those 3. In all 3 covers, the total has stayed under. A sprinkle of plus money because, again, God bless and Godspeed if you're going to take 37.5 with Purdue in this matchup. One of those 5 remaining undefeated teams in the country, Joe, that's number 1, Oregon. A perfect 9-0. In starting out this year, a couple of flaws perhaps for the Ducks, and certainly in Big Ten play. They did not cover in their first 2 in this new league. Now they have covered in 4 straight. They're a 23.5-point home favorite today back in Eugene against a team that struggles mightily in Big Ten action. That is Maryland. How do you approach this matchup?
Well, I think there's no doubt Oregon wins this game. Again, it's going to be very difficult, I believe, in terms of Maryland to score a lot of points on that defense, especially when you look at how dominant they were in the first half against the Wolverines. I will say this, though, from a defensive perspective, for Maryland, they're holding opposing offenses, Ben, to 105 rushing yards per game. They have held every team outside of Indiana under 125 yards rushing. You stuff Jordan James and you stuff those running backs for Oregon, you could force Dylan Gabriel into long 3rd downs. I liked it better at 25, but I still like Maryland to cover this number with Billy Edwards on the road today, guys.
Yeah, I couldn't get there. Maryland, their last 2 byes they've had, which is one this year and then one last year, were outright losses to Northwestern. So that didn't inspire a lot of confidence. I'm very interested to see how things play out without Tez Johnson here. I really cannot believe how my Evan Stewart bet played out last week, where he was my best bet. Tez gets injured. When I go, I guess I kind of cheated. Now he's the number 1. 45-yard touchdown gets called back in an incredible play. They go into the locker room. Dan Lanning's like, I promise you he's got more coming. The first play that they get on offense is throwing the ball to Stewart. It's incomplete. I don't think they looked at him the rest of the game. We don't get through the number. I don't think he had another catch. Evan Stewart could break through numbers today. The thing is, for the Ducks, they just kind of rolled through these teams. None of it really matters. Like, they are not chasing the Heisman for Dylan Gabriel this year, so that's not even something that I can play into the wagers.
Oregon only allowed 270 total yards last week against Michigan in their 5 Big Ten games. 4 of the 5, 301 total yards or less. Ohio State, the only team to exceed that. Here is the conference comparison between the two. Co-favorites to win the Big Ten. Of course, the Ducks have the head-to-head if it needs a spot in the Big Ten championship game. And the 2 best prices to reach the college football playoff. Oregon unbeaten, so is Miami and BYU. We break it down next.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback from Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Our 2 undefeated teams on upset alert today, both a road favorite. We start with the best team in the ACC. Miami is perfect. Undefeated at 9-0 for the first time since 2017, and yet the line is working against the Hurricanes as they take a road trip to Atlanta. It was 10.5 yesterday, 9.5 just about an hour ago. Updated number, only 8 and a hook in favor of Miami against the Bees of Georgia Tech. 63.5 is that total. Kev, we start with you. The number is now down to a single digit in favor of Miami. Are Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes actually on upset alert today against Georgia Tech?
Well, I think it's going to depend a lot on if we have Haynes King in this game. Pete Thamel of ESPN is saying he's going to be a true game-time decision. What a program. And we're going to find out. I should have just let you do it for me there. I got too excited and got it out. But it is going to be really interesting to see if he can make the starting gate. There's another angle, though, in this game that is going to keep me off of it. And it's last year, Georgia Tech handing Cristobal one of the worst losses of his career, where all he had to do was take knees and found a way to lose a game that they just absolutely never should have lost. Joe, I know that moment for you is a lot of why you've been really out on Miami under Mario. I sometimes want to see, you love for a coach to be like, fellas, we have to be extra locked in for a game like this. I feel like Cristobal might lie to himself and pretend like it never happened and not get that extra rung of motivation. As much as I'm in on Miami preseason and different futures, I still struggle to believe that this team is going to get away with playing with fire as much as they have and actually finish the year unbeaten.
Well, I think they might finish when you look at the schedule. We'll see. They were there with Mark Richt as well and lost to Pitt and Kenny Pickett back in the day. That's what really derailed their CFP hopes back then. But we'll see how it plays out. They have played down to the level of competition during certain periods in terms of the ACC schedule, certainly against Cal and Virginia Tech. And you can make the argument Louisville, but that was still a very good Louisville offense. It's going to be a significant drop-off. Aaron Philo, the backup, is a redshirt freshman. I mean, you go from Haynes King. Pyron at least had some, game experience. But again, this is back to the situation of Georgia Tech is fighting to become bowl eligible. The line is suggesting Haynes King will be available to some capacity, but then you bet the 8.5 and you see Philo come out there and then you're wishing you would have held out. It's a no bet for me. I do like Georgia Tech if Haynes King does play because they are fighting also for bowl contention. But if this game is a one-score game in the fourth quarter, that's an opportunity or a late third. You know that Cristobal is going to tack it on if he can, just the way he did against Duke. So from an in-game perspective, keep an eye out for that Miami back.
What's interesting about the Hurricanes' defense, metrically very sound. 8th best rushing defense in the country, allowing only 95 yards per game. They've also recorded 27 sacks. They're great up front, but they allow a ton of points. Miami has played to the over in 7 of 9 games this year. The only true under for the Canes, a push against South Florida, came against Florida State a few weekends ago, but FSU can't really score. Any team that is averaging more than 15 points per game has played to the over against Miami in ACC play. Duke scored 31. Miami has allowed at least 31 in its other 4 ACC games outside of FSU. Duke had not scored more than 27 points in a conference game prior to last week. One of the other reasons they play to the over is because of Cam Ward. 313.5 his passing yards prop today against Georgia Tech. He had 405 touchdowns last week against Duke in a comeback effort for Miami. And just quickly on Georgia Tech, a good underdog team after the Florida State win, of course, in Ireland, 13-3 against the spread, 10 outright victories with Brent Key. They now have not covered in 3 consecutive games as an underdog. Joe, the 102nd meeting of the Holy War between BYU and Utah as conference foes once again for the first time since 2010 when Utah left the Mountain West for the Pac-12. BYU has not won in Rice-Eccles since 2006, and yet the Cougars are unbeaten and a 3.5-point road favorite today in Salt Lake. How do you see the 102nd edition of the Holy War playing out?
Typically, I would take the points in a rivalry game, and I would still take the 2.5 now that we're seeing in the market with Utah. But it's going to be very difficult. BYU's battle-tested. They're the more complete offense and certainly playing better throughout the regular season. Utah has played down to the level of competition, but this is their Super Bowl. Nothing to play for. And when you have the Holy War, I'll take the points with Utah.
I love the over in this game. This is the second, Utah can't score total of the season. Here's the thing. The first time it was against Houston, who is one of the worst offenses in all of college football. I don't think this has moved enough here over the 40. It's too light.
I think both defenses can be got on the ground. We'll talk about it in a bit, and we'll go very fast next.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to college football today. Not quite as fast as promised heading into the commercial break, but it could be very feisty. We shifted things just a little bit, but now we'll get to Ben's top 10 in comparison to the first college football playoff rankings in the 12-team era and here in the 2024 season. Before we get to 10, we talk about 15 or so, the wait list for those teams just on the outside looking in. Here is the wait list. Next up, if you will. Penn State, Iowa State, Alabama, SMU, and Texas A&M. Those are the 5 teams, not necessarily in proper order, but just on the outside of the top 10. Kevin Walsh, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think basically, this year we've made sure to keep kindness within this segment.
Thank you. It's been really nice.
Penn State outside of the top 10 is exactly what I'm talking about. Absolutely where they belong. I think they are a waitlist team. This is no crazy, I'll get this team out of my top 25. Listen, we know they can still beat up on teams. They did only lose the game by a touchdown, and if not for some insane decisions and ineffectiveness really in the red area, they could have had that game tied. No doubt. I don't think Penn State has a top 10 resume right now, Joe. I don't think they've earned that. So I'm happy to see Penn State on just the wait list here.
No, I'm there with you. Again, I'm not sold on Drew Aller. I'm not sold on, their passing attack in a big spot. Their best performance, you can argue, was on the road against USC where they trailed by double digits. In that matchup, they did win, but we see 5 losses now out of USC. The most impressive one for me is SMU because it's not just the offense with Kevin Jennings. It is the defense. Statistically, holding offenses less than 3 yards per carry, less than 100 yards on the ground to opposing a 29% third down defense. That's one of the tops in all of college football. They crashed the party. They're not going to be potentially a one and done. They can win some games in the college football playoffs.
Mustang's one of those 10 teams holding opponents to less than 100 yards per game on the ground. We saw what they did to a once lethal offense in Pitt last week. SMU with some quality wins against teams ranked in the CFP top 25 as well, where things stand. And their only loss of the year to BYU that at the time looked bad.
Yeah.
Maybe not as bad as once perceived. A&M on the outside, of course, after getting beat last week by South Carolina. Alabama would probably be the team that ranked 11th in the CFP rankings, would be the closest to the top 10 out of the teams in the wait list. And I did have a debate on whether to keep a Big 12 team in the wait list, despite getting upset by a point last week at home against Texas Tech, albeit as a near 2-touchdown favorite. Iowa State remains, Lisi.
Yeah, and Iowa State, again, concerns with Rocco Beck, a little inconsistent. And we have to keep an eye out on the 2 teams that are playing today, Texas Tech and Colorado.
Sure.
I think they can unseat Iowa State in terms of that next best team in the Big 12.
Look, preseason played over 1.5 Big 12 teams to get in. Yeah. The only pathway now is probably BYU run the table and then lose in the Big 12 title game. It is what it is. I don't really think Iowa State Army is a tough debate, right? Because clearly what this shows, and because I know, Boise's in your top 10, which I don't love personally. I'm not telling you they don't deserve a wait list. I think Boise in front of Bama, even Boise in front of Penn State, I can't necessarily agree with. Boise's claim to fame is hanging with Oregon. Back when the Ducks were a total mess, they were on the road as a 3-point loss. That's great. Army's beating everyone. Yeah. I know they play terrible teams. I get that. But also, I think Indiana has shown they've earned it. The second best cover team, I think, is Army. Right. And last week's non-cover was without Bryson Daly, who's legitimately played at a Heisman level. And they're this is what the committee does, man. And this is why, again, I get upset with those rankings. And I think you truly do a better job with this, and you're more willing to adjust. The AP poll, because it's been going on all year, Army's at 18.
Right. Yeah.
The committee, fresh eyes at it, first crack at it, Army 25th, where if they were doing it all season, Army would be much higher. And I still think the 25th is a little slanderous.
Can I just ask a question with Army? So if they win today against North Texas, they have a game, a top 10 battle with Notre Dame. Right. If they lose, and let's say lose a 3-point game, because we saw Navy get smashed by them, would you then put Army in the area of where Iowa State and Penn State are?
They would be in consideration, I would think, for the wait list. I actually think this game today against North Texas far supreme to that matchup against Notre Dame, despite brand power of what it would be, because we're not going to expect Army to win that game. More than likely, they will not, and Notre Dame will. And the at-large berth for Army in the CFP is not there. Through the American, it is. And now without Bryson Daly, which is what we are seeing for today against a very potent offense in North Texas, It's going to be difficult for Dwayne Coleman and the Black Knights to get that win. Just wanted to make 2 points quickly based on my rankings and in comparison to the college football playoff rankings. SMU is just on the outside of the top 12 at 13. Some respect for the Stangs. Iowa State, who is the second highest ranked Big 12 team, has 3 two-loss SEC teams in front of them, including Texas A&M, LSU, and Ole Miss. A difficult ground to make up, Kev, to go over 1.5 Big 12 teams into the college football playoff.
But again, I don't have much beef with it. The problem for Iowa State is you pick up their best win is a Big 10 team. Listen, the Big 12 is not providing a lot of chances for quality wins. It's not like Iowa State's played the teams that were supposed to be good. If memory serves, there's no Utah on there. I don't even think there's an Oklahoma State on there so far.
There's not.
Who in the world put this schedule? What if they just played Baylor 8 times?
That's why I had the over of 7.5. Thought I was going to get there last week. Laying 2 tutties against the Red Raiders did not happen. All right, now to the top 10, where Kevin is correct. Boise State checks in here at the 10. We work our way up. Boise State 10th. Tennessee remains in the top 10 at number 9. I actually, despite being an Indiana lover, have them slotted in at 8. BYU at 7, and Notre Dame at number 6. And here's why I have Indiana at number 8, just to say it, because although I believe in IU, and I love to make the points that people say anybody could be 9-0 with this slate, maybe nobody would perform quite as well as Indiana has. 33 point per game average victory margin, the best cover margin in the country, as I have laid out. I do actually believe the strength of schedule is fair to justify them behind a BYU and even teams with a loss. It's 103rd. It's 14th the remainder of this season for Indiana, including a road trip to Columbus and a big one today, of course, Joe, at home against Michigan.
No, I love to see it. I guess for me personally, I would just jumble them. I would have probably Tennessee at 7 and have BYU behind Indiana because of the close games that BYU has played. Oklahoma State, but that's just me.
And just to say, BYU is one of 7 teams ranked or just around the country, in fact, that has multiple wins against the CFP top 25. So you can't really argue strength of resume for the Cougs.
Yeah, so BYU is where I'd have them. The reason I have Indiana higher, I'm lower on Notre Dame ranking-wise. The NIU thing is, again, it's not aged gracefully. It's just it happened so long ago. They're kind of getting away with it now. Here's my thing with Indiana. Yes, it's 103rd strength of schedule. There's not a single game you can look at. We love doing this in sports. They should have lost. People keep saying, Alabama should have lost to South Carolina. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. They were never in danger of losing that game. They were in danger of it going to overtime at one point. Miraculously, they were never in danger of losing that football game through what I was watching there. Indiana is steamrolling everyone. And in my opinion, their 3 best resume points are their last 3 games. Nebraska, who hung with Ohio State, beat Colorado, drilled. Backup quarterback against a good Washington team, 14. Thanks for coming. Michigan State, KOR's first game back. Yeah, that's 47 unanswered. They're still scoring in East Lansing right now. I would personally have them 6th.
Yeah.
I mean this. If you told me you have IU 1, I'd be fine with it. And that's how good they've been.
And I think last week as well against Michigan State, the first time Indiana had trailed all season, and they come back to plate 47 unanswered. Let's get to the top 5 just to show it here quickly if we can. As we go through the top 5, Texas at 5, Miami 4, Ohio State still 3 in my mind. The committee has them at 2. I have Georgia at number 2. And Oregon has leapfrogged the Dogs where they were a week ago. The Ducks, to me, the most dominant and balanced team in the country.
Copy-paste for me. But I'll just say, awful game against Idaho, awful game against Kentucky, awful game against Nebraska, 700 awful game. IU doesn't even have that on the resume. That's how dominant they've been.
They have been dominant, but the other teams have squared off against. Maybe you can make a better schedule.
All better wins.
I think that's why.
No doubt about it. But we'll see. That's what the remainder of this season has. We'll go really fast next.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all season long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia and Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
All right, now as promised, it is time to go very, very fast to preview the Week 11 slate around the country in college football. How do we do just that?
Folks, it's time for that RPO. And the R stands for ranked. That is all we are giving you today. And we have to use both the AP and the college football poll. Things got a little wonky there because of what they did. But we begin with Boise State, ranked 10th in Ben's top 10. I disagree. But, man, Boise continues to get a lot of respect here, Lisi. One thing that's jumped off the page to me, Ashton Genty has not scored in the first half of 2 consecutive games. I know it's a high bar. He's the only player we'd make note of that for. But considering he's minus 550 to score in the first half, I thought it was noteworthy.
Yeah, I like the look. I like Boise minus the 24.5. Look for Genty to blow through his number today. 170 on the ground. That's what Nevada's defense is giving up. They're giving up 28 points per game total to opposing offenses. And not only that, I like the total 60.5. Style points, I think, are going to start to matter, especially now with the college football playoff rankings. You might get a little out of Nevada. They're averaging 24 points per game. Boise and the over, guys.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, when you look at the over for Boise State, over in 6 of 8 games this year, the Broncos have scored at least 34 points in all 6 overs, but 56 plus in 4 of the 6. In those 6 games that Boise State has played to the over, they are averaging 51.5 points per game. They're averaging nearly 46 in every game this year. That's a third-best scoring offense in the country. Boise State also really good up front in terms of what they do on the offensive line and getting after the opposing quarterback. 38 sacks, second most in college football. Just a quick shout-out to Jeff Choate and Nevada. We talked about them week 0, right? New era. They had won just 2 games each of the past 2 years. Already 3 wins, so good for the Wolfpack. That's pretty solid. 3-7, though, so far.
Yeah.
$156 allowed per game on the ground. 2 of the last 3 teams that Ashton Genty and the Broncos have seen, allowing $120 per game or less on the ground. So the best rushing defenses that Ashton Genty has seen in the Mountain West. An intriguing spot in SEC territory between 2 teams flirting with either the AP Top 25 or the CFB rankings as well. Vanderbilt, another upset last week against Auburn. South Carolina, the same against Texas A&M. But, Joe, the Gamecocks laying 6.5 in this spot in Nashville, a team on either side that people like for either reasons. Which way do you lean?
I liked South Carolina at the start of the week, minus the 3.5. Now it's 6.5 with the injury report. Pavia's probable he will play. But again, it comes down to the physicality. I understand how dominant Vanderbilt is, but I'm willing to back Rocket Morris, Lenora Sellers in this matchup. They're coming off 246, 250 in terms of that matchup. Last week averaged well over 6 yards per carry. I did alt Rocket Sanders 90 plus because Vanderbilt's very good against the run. But you know what? The fact that we ballooned here, South Carolina, but I'm going to money line it.
I would say I think one of the advantages that has worked for me a few times is I'm the only person in the world that knows South Carolina has a good offense.
Yeah.
We saw it total way too low against A&M, team total way too low against Bama. But again, so does Vanderbilt. I look over in this football game. I know it's RPO, but can I just pause quickly and ask the group this? How do you view Bama's loss to Vanderbilt now, all things considered? Because at the time, it was as bad as Notre Dame's loss to NIU. It can't be that anymore, right, Joe?
No, it's not. It's not bad. I mean, we talk about it on air in terms of the radio, how, Vanderbilt, if they win this game, they still play LSU and Tennessee. And if things crack their way, there's the potential, if they have 2 losses in the SEC, they might be in terms of the SEC championship game. There is that possibility.
I think it's an unexpected loss. I don't think it's a bad loss. It's just the multiple losses that could pile up where you didn't think Vandy would be one of them. That's probably the detriment to Alabama's resume, in my opinion.
Plus, they had won 12 straight over Vanderbilt, and they won the way they have.
I don't think that Bama can survive a third loss. I think, because I was telling you this, like, within my rankings, right? Like, I would have Bama in front of Penn State. I would have Bama actually within my top 10, because the more we look at it now, at Tennessee and at Vanderbilt, don't hang your head on that. They still have great victories this year, which, again, the committee apparently doesn't care about your wins. They care more about your losses, which was an embarrassing moment.
Which drives me insane. Losses are still losses. Wins must matter more. Vandy, a perfect 5-0 against the number as an underdog this year. 4 outright wins. South Carolina, as a favorite under Shane Beamer, 11-5-1 ATS. Not often, but it's the best cover percentage as the favored side in the SEC, over in 4 of 6 SEC games this year, Kev. I agree with you. Big news. We literally just broke down Army in Ben's top 10, and the line had worked against the Black Knights down to 2.5. Bryson Daly had no props out. It is now 5 in a hook, and Bryson Daly is making his return today against the Mean Green of North Texas. The total on the rise because of it as well. Kev, Army 8-0 for the first time since 1996. 6-1-1 against the spread against one of the best offenses in the country. That's North Texas.
Yeah, look, for me, with the way Army's been able to score the football with Bryson Daly out there, I can only look towards now the over in this game. North Texas, we know, brings the juice. Army does not play unders. That's what we usually expect. Not this year's group, Joe.
Yeah, it's a good look. I lean to Army even laying 5.5. North Texas allowed 6 yards per rush in back-to-back games. They allowed 297 last week. This is still an Army offense. And if Daly didn't play, I would have still laid the 2.5 in terms of the matchup, averaging 340 on the ground. It's more of a scheme perspective. I don't know if they're going to be able to jump up to take Army out of the game plan, Knights and bust.
So Army had gone over in its first 5 games against FBS foes, under in 2 straight. Of course, it was Dwayne Coleman last week against Air Force. Chandler Morris and UNT, the Mean Green, have gone over in all 7 FBS games this season. Washington State ranked in the first CFP rankings, taking on Utah State at home tonight on the Palouse. It's a 3-touchdown spread, Kev, in favor of Wazoo. How do you see it?
I am going to fade Washington State because I'm annoyed at their ranking compared to Army's 25th ranking. I don't really think that's justifiable, and those are the type of things that the committee forever has been able to do, and they don't matter. And then all of a sudden, they might pick their head up this year and go, whoops, that mattered. Sorry, we shouldn't have done that.
Give me Mateer laying the 20.5, the 69.5. Let's
Gardner Mateer.
Party over.
Utah State over in 5 of 7 FBS games, second worst scoring defense in the country at 41.5 points per game. And John Mateer's still running 10 rushing touchdowns this year for Wazoo's quarterback. One final game to look at, some pay dirt and go for the loot picks next.
together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia and Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
One more game to break down in the SEC. Then we find some end zone excellence and maybe a money line underdog or another thing to have you some plus money on this Week 11 Saturday. Somehow, some way, and this is actually probably where I got the most mad at the CFB selection committee, Missouri is still ranked number 24 in the country. Why would a ranked Missouri at home be catching points from Oklahoma if they deserve to be ranked? I haven't answered the question.
I do think it's because everybody is injured, but it does make me like the Mizzou Tigers a little bit sneaky, though. I have no idea what you do with the Mizzou resume point for Alabama. Beating a team 34-0 that's weirdly ranked is just an interesting thing. Look, Missouri, for me, don't love the game.
I like Missouri, don't love the game, but I will look to the total. Oklahoma getting 2 wide receivers back for Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold, dealer in the headlights whenever there's pressure. Missouri can bring some pressure, so like the total, lean to Missouri.
Missouri, a favorite 6 times this year. They have not been good. 1-2 ATS as a favorite in SEC play. The only cover by the hook against Auburn. They've allowed at least 17 points in every game as a favorite against Power 4 competition. I still might lean to the under because I'm not sure how Oklahoma is stacking it up. All right, Kev, now we look to get some money inside the end zone today.
A little end zone excellence, they're calling it. It's time for the Pay Dirt Picks. Red hot. This segment, there's always controversy and infighting, and then I just step in, pop a winner on the table, and I get on out of here. Will Howard, anytime touchdown, -120, hasn't scored in 2 straight. Prior to that, hit the end zone 5 times in a row. Purdue allowing the 3rd most rushing touchdowns, I believe, in all of college football, certainly the most in the Big Ten. -120, I like Will Howard, Joe.
I like Caleb Douglas for Texas Tech, +130 today. Everybody looking at Taj Brooks. I think Taj Brooks could definitely get over his total of 124.5, but can't pay the value in terms of Taj Brooks. 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns. Douglas is the security blanket for Morton, going toe-to-toe maybe with Travis Hunter. Look for those Texas Tech wide receivers to hit pay dirt.
The only reason L.J. Martin, BYU star running back, has a plus money price against Utah is because the Utes are great defensively, and the total is 40.5. But like Kevin Walsh, I think we see some points. L.J. Martin, who has scored in each of the last 2 games, 4 TDs in the last 3 at +115. Of course, we have involved the producers, the guys behind the scenes, in their anytime touchdown picks. We almost kicked out Chris Kofsky But he is back, trying to make his statement, and a good change from Chris. Jaden Higgins, minus 105, the outstanding Iowa State receiver against Kansas. But we added Joe Frizo. That's the power of two to the joke.
Whoa.
Both on Caleb Douglas.
Kid's a winner.
Unironically.
Kid's a winner before
Now,
he
how do
even
you feel?
started.
Is the human algo making some changes, or are you sticking with Caleb Douglas?
No, the kid, I always like Frizo. Frizo's my guy.
Caleb Douglas stays
So
down in the end zone. It's not your fault.
No, it's not.
Only on Joe Frizo. The producer head-to-head. We hope Koski can hit one today. All right, now from minus money prices to hit Pater to a couple of big plus money prices.
Justice Haynes, by the way, probably finds the end zone just off some other intel. Open that vault up. There's some hidden loot in there. Not from me, but from the others, I think. My new goal in this segment, because I lose all of these, is to just get Ben's approval because of how much he's upset I don't do Moneyline Dogs. I've been able to do that a few weeks in a row. I think I can do it again. One rushing touchdown each quarter, Boise State, Nevada. I think Genty can handle this on his own, quite frankly. Plus 370, B, double-S. Plus 370.
I mean, listen, I can't get mad at it. It's a pretty good look. I think Ashton Genty gets back into the Heisman conversation today with a big day against a Nevada rushing defense that allows more than $156 on the ground. I can't believe I'm doing it. Because I play by the rules, there's not many greater than 2-to-1 money line prices on the slate today. Looked at UAB. I don't believe in Trent Dilfer. Oklahoma State plus 290, Ben, don't say so. But TCU and Sonny Dykes this year, 0-6 against the spread as the favorite. They're the fifth best passing offense in the country, but the 11th worst rushing offense in the country, only 106 yards per game. Oklahoma State's abysmal anywhere on defense, but they're better slightly against the pass than the run. Lisi guy, finish it out with your money line.
I'm trucking down I-60. Is that the route down in Indiana? I'm going to take the plus 480 dog. Michigan outright. They've won 27 of 28 games. I'm going to take the 14.5, but I'm going to sprinkle plus 480 on the money line. Put a little pinch between your cheek and gum.
I don't know if that's the right route.
That was good, man. I was waiting for the Michigan, the first one of today. Kevin and I jumped on that a little early. That was pretty good. Three's up for our third and final hour on college football today. Up next.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, guys?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of concern, I would say, for Georgia in Carson Beck. 3 interceptions once again. His third 3-interception game in the last 5 for UGA.
You can argue if they had Alex Orji as their starting quarterback for Georgia, they would be perfect and unbeaten right now just by not turning the football over and running it with your talented backfield.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.